Okay, before I even attempt to do predictions this week, can we just ask the question, is the entire NFC fraudulent?
I don't trust like that.
Because I'm starting to feel that way. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Somehow I keep on doing pretty decent in this, and I don't know how. Grossi. And today we are going to be breaking down and predicting every single game in Week 12 of the NFL, and we'll see if we have success. Last week, I went a very respectable 10-4, making me 163 on the season. Here is the list of where things went right, where things went wrong, and yes, it's because I keep picking the Packers and keep losing on that, but I will never stop picking them. If there's any prediction you don't listen to, just know that I'm going to pick the Packers every single time. You could call me a homer, but Futurama's better than The Simpsons. Yeah, I said it. So let's start off with the 3 Thanksgiving games coming up on Thursday. Starting off with the early game, you got the Buffalo Bills taking on the Detroit Lions in a game that I think a lot of people anticipated being god-awful at the start of the season, but now, who knows? The Lions, they're on a 3-game win streak and are second in the NFC North. Yep, that's the reality that I'm living in. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen in the second half of that game got his mojo back.
The libido, the life force, the essence, the right stuff. What the French call a certain, I don't know what.
A lot of the reasons for the Bills' success was Matt Milano and the fact they actually relied on their running game, splitting the carries between 2 primary backs and picking up the same amount of yardage for both of them, and actually being effective on the ground. And that was something that the Chiefs and the Bills had in common last week, and it just kind of provides a little bit more nuance and balance for both of those teams, which will definitely help them moving forward and getting closer to the playoffs. But the Bills we've been talking about have been a little bit out of sorts. Josh Allen definitely in that first half did not look like himself, but as I said, kind of got a little bit better as the game went on. And meanwhile, the Lions, they're kind of the surprise story this season. A ton of injuries. A few weeks ago, they fired their DB coach, and apparently that was it, because now their defense is playing significantly better. Aiden Hutchinson has been a monster and was a monster last week against the New York Giants, and Jamal Williams leading in rushing touchdowns in the NFL, which I'm just so happy for Jay Swag Daddy. I love him so much. So this actually might be a closer game than some anticipate. I am still going to go with the Buffalo Bills here, though if the Lions win, nothing would surprise me anymore. This could be a little bit of a trap game, but then again, who's it really home field advantage for? The Bills played in Detroit on Sunday because of the blizzard, and now they're just going to turn around and play in Detroit again. So who's it going to be? Who is going to win the hearts of all of Detroit's faithful? Bills? Lions? Eminem?
Eminem. So he was circular.
Marshall Mathers. Eminem, the rapper Eminem.
Do you look like this?
It's going to be the Bills. Following that, you got the second Thanksgiving game, an NFC East divisional rival. You got the New York Giants taking on the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants losing to the Detroit Lions, as we were just talking about. Brian Dable going to be in the locker room basically motivating his team like in the Little Giants.
And even if those Cowboys are better than you guys, even if they beat you 99 times out of 100, that still leaves
one time. One time. Yeah. One time.
Trying to take on the Dallas Cowboys, who just put up 40 points and held the Minnesota Vikings to 3 on Sunday, in which was arguably the best game all season. No, it was not the Bills-Vikings, it was this game. No bias whatsoever. There's starting to be some lingering doubts about the Giants, though I could say that there have been some all season. They went on this big win streak, surprising a lot of people, but now they might be starting to come back to earth a little bit here. They lost Robinson for the season. Saquon Barkley was really inefficient against the Detroit Lions, and if they can't utilize the run game, they can't win. Look at the Seattle game and look at the Lions game. Meanwhile, the Cowboys, after a disappointing loss to the Green Bay Packers, they came out swinging, and they were angry on Sunday. Their offense was phenomenal. Pollard, Zeke, both look great. Dak played well, and their defense absolutely swarmed the Minnesota Vikings, sacking Kirk Cousins 7 times. This should be a good divisional game. They usually are between these two. I am going to pick the Dallas Cowboys to win. They'll be motivated coming off a hot win against the Vikings this past Sunday, and so because of that, Cowboys win. Following that, you got the primetime game on Thanksgiving. You got the New England Patriots taking on the Minnesota Vikings. The Patriots, yeah. I don't even know if what they did to the Jets offense is legal.
I will make it legal.
Getting a W at the very end off a punt return. Zach Wilson getting absolutely demolished by the Patriots defense, though Mac Jones got sacked a whole bunch of times too. They're just letting him die back there. And this is really just going to come down to how good is the defense of the Patriots and their run game. Meanwhile, the Vikings, as we already talked about, they got killed 40-3 against the Cowboys. They need a rebound game. This is being played in Minnesota, so maybe that will help a little bit, though it did not help on Sunday. And they're going up against another tough defense, which maybe you're going to start to see a pattern here that when they're playing against good defenses, they're not going to be able to do much. I originally picked the Vikings to win this game just because I think their offense should be able to put something together more than the Jets did last week. But just because, and again, no bias, I'm going to pick the New England Patriots to win. And here's why. I think the defense will do enough to get after Kirk Cousins. That offensive line of the Vikings is now making me very, very nervous. And so because of that, I think they'll be able to string some things together. A power run game should be able to tear through the Vikings defense like the Cowboys did. So because of that, I'm going to pick Bill Belichick and the Patriots to win. Then you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Cleveland Browns. The Buccaneers enjoyed themselves a nice bye week, and they watched the Falcons get ever closer to that divisional lead, which it really is not going to matter because whoever wins the South is probably just going to have a 7-10 record to end the year. Meanwhile, the Browns put up a good fight against the Buffalo Bills, and I don't want to go sleep on this. Jacoby Brissett looked freaking phenomenal against that Bills defense, though their run game was really inefficient and they had absolutely nothing going. Oh, and Joe Woods needs to get fired on defense. The Buccaneers have been a struggling football team, but they have put together a couple of wins as of late. And the Browns, yeah, they're going to get Deshaun Watson back soon, but I don't think anybody's happy about that. I'm going to have the Buccaneers win this game because maybe they'll be able to build on that momentum that they have had the past couple of weeks. Their offense seemed to be going a little bit better, and more importantly, their defense looked to be the defense of old. So the Tampa Bay Bucs win, and the Browns, this is your last good week of having a respectable quarterback. Following that, you have what could be one of the games of the week. You got the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Tennessee Titans. The Bengals coming off a bye week and then defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers in a very close game. P. Ryan, one of the big reasons why they won that game. Joe Burrow played pretty well, going up against a very good Pittsburgh Steeler defense. Meanwhile, the Titans going into Lambeau, taking care of business. Derrick Henry absolutely demolishing the Packers, whether it was on the ground or whether it was throwing touchdowns. And big whoop, the Titans are good. Their defense, of course, is very formidable, and this should be a really fun game, a rematch of last year's divisional round. The Bengals, the big thing I've been wanting to see out of them all year, as I've been saying a million times, is consistency. Titans, they're kind of like a sneaky good team with that defense. That offense is hit or miss, though. If this turns into a shootout, the Bengals are going to win. However, I think the Titans are going to keep it grounded enough to be able to get the W. They'll keep Joe Burrow off the field by utilizing Derrick Henry. And because of that, I'm actually going to go for the Titans for the surprise win. Then you got the Houston Texans taking on the Miami Dolphins. The Texans are the worst team in the league. They've won one game. They tied a game, which was nice in week 1 against the Colts. And hey, they run the ball pretty well, but they're going up against the Dolphins. And while the Dolphins don't have the best defense, they have an offense that could absolutely bury you. And the Texans defense is not so good. The Dolphins are going to win this game, and it's going to be bad. It's going to be like if Cell went up against Hercule. Yeah, I know that's a DBZ reference. Yeah, I know on a Wednesday, it's crazy. But yeah, they're going to kill him. So sorry, Miami, if I curse you, but Dolphins win. Then you got the Chicago Bears taking on the New York Jets. The Bears, lost another heartbreaker. Justin Fields dislocated his shoulder. Don't know if he's going to be playing on Sunday. That could be a big loss for them considering their defense is not good. Their run game, very, very good. And Justin Fields, when he is playing, I mean, he's been lighting it up the past couple of weeks. So we'll see what his status is. But we do know that Mike White will be starting on Sunday because Zach Wilson... Woof. Zach Wilson did not look good against the Patriots, and basically after that game is basically saying,
yeah, we're all trying to find the guy who did this and give him a spanking.
It's obviously this guy, right?
Yes.
And yes, his receivers did not catch every ball, and their offensive line is banged up, but the Jets' offensive performance was pretty much pitiful. This is going to be a tough game to predict. I'm actually going to pick the Jets here because I'm going to be going with the anticipation that Justin Fields is not going to play. If you're the Bears, I mean, you already figured it out. He is your franchise QB. Don't risk any further injury. It's the Jets. You're not going to win the division. Get that good draft pick. And the Jets, I mean, hey, they could be a playoff team, and they're probably going to go further with Joe Flacco than Zach Wilson. So, Jets... you get the win. Then you have another sneaky good game. You got the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Washington Commanders. In week 12, this being a good game? Seriously, what the hell are we doing? The Falcons getting a W over Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears last week. Meanwhile, the Commanders pulling off a W against the Houston Texans in a sound victory. And both of these teams, I would say, overperforming their expectations from what a lot of pundits were saying in the offseason, including myself. I thought the Falcons were going to be the worst team in the league, but that is not the case. Cordarrelle Patterson puts some damn respect on that guy's name. He is trying to will the Falcons into the playoffs and a divisional lead. Meanwhile, the Commanders... It's just fun to watch them play. I'm not going to lie. And yeah, Heineke's not amazing, but he's buying shoes of all of his slain enemies, which is kind of just badass at this point. It's like wearing the armor of your defeated foe. So you kind of have to cheer for him a little bit. Not Dan Snyder, though. He can rot in hell and in prison. But I am going to pick the Commanders to get the W here in what should be a pretty darn good game. The Commanders' defense has been pretty good, and the Falcons have a good running game. We'll kind of see how that collides. But Wildflower gets the win, and the Commanders get that much closer to a playoff spot. And then roll out the tanks because you got a tank bowl, baby. You got the Denver Broncos taking on the Carolina Panthers. Oh, boy. The Broncos losing in overtime by leaving Davante Adams wide open. They lost against the Raiders. The Raiders were busy beating themselves every week, and now Josh McDaniels has actually beaten an opponent. It's embarrassing. And Russ Wilson, well...
we're not just doing this for money. We're doing it for a shitload of money.
Meanwhile, the Panthers putting up a decent fight on defense against Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, but their offense is just downright bad. Could not get anything going. And truly, this is just going to be a game of two pretty good defenses, though the Broncos defense, I think, is better than the Panthers, and two really bad offenses. And I don't know who's going to win. I'm going to say the Broncos get the W just because I, want to see Perna happy a little bit, but I have no faith in that. Broncos win, but really this whole season has been a loss. Then you got the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Ravens, as we just talked about, got the win over the Panthers, though it was not very inspiring. The offense kind of came alive and scored 10 whole points in the fourth quarter, getting the W. But it's the defense that was really stepping up against Carolina. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jaguars coming off a bye from last week, getting a little bit of extra rest. Listen, Jaguars fans don't have a ton to be happy about, but Christian Kirk has been playing well. Trevor Lawrence has been playing well. Your defensive line hasn't shown up at all. So there's some things to cling to for this season. Maybe the defensive line will show up a little bit more and give Lamar Jackson a tough time. I don't imagine the Ravens having too much difficulty in this game, though. It is being played in the Floridian heat, so you never know. But I'm going to pick Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to get the W, but it might be a little bit of a closer game than some anticipated. Then you got the Chargers taking on the Arizona Cardinals. Chargers looked like they had a little bit of life this past Sunday night. Justin Herbert having himself a good game and looked a little bit like the Chargers of old. Mike Williams came back for a minute. Then you had Keenan Allen who came back. Both made some differences, and it allowed guys like Palmer to get even more open, but eventually fell to the Kansas City Chiefs and were just gashed on the ground. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, Yeah, they got blown out on Monday night, and they just look abysmal. Their run defense is bad. Their whole defense is bad, to be completely honest. Colt McCoy started again. Maybe Kyler Murray will play this week, but their offense was uninspiring. It was just check down after check down. And the Cardinals are just a team without an identity right now. They're basically walking around like the guy in Memento.
You don't know who you are.
I'm going to pick the LA Chargers to get the W just because I think they have a more explosive offense, and I think their defense will do enough to keep Kyler Murray or Colt McCoy or Trace McSorley, whoever the hell's back there, contained. So Chargers, they get the win, but knowing the Chargers, they'll probably make this go into overtime. Then you got the Vegas Raiders taking on the Seattle Seahawks. The Raiders getting a W last week against the Denver Broncos because, listen, it doesn't matter how bad your season's going. You can always count on sweeping the Broncos. Meanwhile, you got the Seattle Seahawks, who were on a bye last week, no longer number one in the NFC West. The Seahawks are going to have to rely on their ground game, Geno Smith playing well, and that defense stepping up in order for them to make a playoff push. Geno, and I would say the Seahawks as a whole, have definitely outperformed a lot of their expectations. The Raiders are a very bad football team, though, and while Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs and Max Crosby are all scary parts of that offense and defense, I do think the Seahawks should get the W here because they're just the more balanced football team. And after this, Raiders fans can continue to scream to fire Josh McDaniels. Then you had what a lot of people thought would potentially be a Super Bowl preview, but it's not. You got the LA Rams taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Rams, woof. Matthew Stafford left because of concussion protocol, but he is not playing like himself. The offensive line is bad. Cooper Kupp is out. Their offense is bad. Their defense is bad. They allowed Andy Dalton to look like an MVP, which he is not. It's all bad. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are the best team in football. Travis Kelce, 3 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. And they have a run game now. I do not think this is going to be a close game. The Chiefs are probably going to annihilate them like they annihilated the 49ers earlier this year. Maybe the Rams can keep it somewhat close depending on who their QB is, but I think the pass rush is going to get after whoever is under center. Their defense is not going to be able to contain Mahomes or Kelce. So because of that, Chiefs winning a blowout. Then you got the New Orleans Saints taking on the San Francisco 49ers. The Saints looked like a whole new team against the Rams. Yep, that's how bad the Rams are. Andy Dalton throwing a bunch of tutties. Chris Olave, he is definitely in the running for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Looked really good. Defense played well. And the Saints, they're just inconsistent. Meanwhile, the 49ers absolutely obliterated the Cardinals like we talked about earlier, and they were finally utilizing all of their weapons, especially on the ground. Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and Elijah Mitchell, all just making it hell for the Arizona Cardinals. This could wind up being a decently close game, though I think the 49ers defense is really going to get after Andy Dalton, and Andy Dalton's going to look like he has the past couple of weeks, and I'm not talking about how he looked on Sunday. The 49ers are number one in their division right now. I anticipate they're going to keep that after this week. 49ers win. Then on Sunday Night Football, you got the Green Bay mother-loving Packers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Packers losing to Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. And even worse, they lost to Todd Downing. And we all know how his drives go.
3 cheeseburgers, 2 large fries, 2 chocolate shakes, and 1 large Coke.
And some flapjacks.
Too early for flapjacks?
The Packers, after putting up a complete game against the Cowboys in the previous week, looked completely out of sort against a good defense that was able to stop the run. The one shining beacon, Christian Watson. 5 touchdowns in 5 days. The rookie has really come alive here. We'll see if he's going to be able to continue that momentum and streak heading into Philadelphia, going up against an Eagles team that definitely looks vulnerable. Their defense is solid, but it's really their offense that the Packers are going to have to contend with. For the Eagles to win this game, they're probably going to have to go back to their tried and true method of just running the ball really, really well, which for the most part they've been able to do, and the Packers haven't been able to stop the run. So that's a really big mismatch and doesn't bode well for the Packers. I'm going to pick the Green Bay Packers to win because I can't pick against my team, but it's likely the Eagles are going to win. And Matt LaFleur might be going into the locker room at the very end and recreating this Michael Scott moment.
All I can do right now is put on a brave face and go out there and be their leader.
It's over. We are screwed.
But it doesn't matter. Packers win. And finally, on Monday Night Football, This means I can finally do rankings on Monday and have it for Johnny early. I don't have to record it at 1 a.m. anymore because both these teams are not going to be in the top 10. You got the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Indianapolis Colts. Both teams had close games against teams that they thought they would probably lose to last week, but they still lost. The Steelers, TJ Watt, you're a legend and nothing is ever your fault. Kenny Pickett didn't look too bad against the Cincinnati Bengals, so there's a bright spot there. But good God, they need to fix their O-line and do a lot of things. Meanwhile, the Colts kept it close against the Eagles, but were unable to finish the job. The Colts offense is kind of uninspiring at this point. Yes, Matt Ryan has had a little bit of a resurgence under Jeff Saturday, but we'll see how they do against a very good defense in the Steelers. I am going to pick the Steelers here. I think Kenny Pickett will be able to have a decent game against a good Colts defense, though the offensive line might let him die there. But I'm really picking the Steelers because of their defense. I think they'll be able to stop Matt Ryan, get after him, stop the run, and eventually pick up the win in which will probably be a very low-scoring, boring game. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you think these games are going to shake out in Week 12? And then we got December football, baby. Let me know. You guys tell me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media, see down below. Check out Patcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.